Right, so at the end of the first video I did on these hinge pins, we'd managed to accomplish the 6 fixed pins, and I'd started making a few of the loose driving parts for the second part, if you understand what I mean. That's this bit. So this is what we've got to do today. I'm not really sure how to do it, but I've got an idea. It's just if I've got the right materials. So I've made myself a little jig like I do with most of these. Just makes life easier. That's just to get the shape right so that it's somewhere near. Now I'm going to use this 8mm square. I think it will probably be just about right. I hope there's going to be enough meat in it because it's got to have a bit of a shoulder on. So let's get cracking and see how we get on. First heat, about 3/4 of an inch, flatten it down, just push it out either side, make a little sort of pear shaped on the end. Very end in the guillotine tool, and that makes the interesting little shape. Just use the cross pane just to define the point a little bit better. So that's that bit basically done. Now next thing, we've got to flatten it right down, get it down to, I suppose it's just over 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit more. Now these, again, I think are going to take me a fair old while. I'm just thinning this down, not down to quite as thin as the bit on the end. Now I'm just necking it in with the guillotine tool, and that's going to be the thickness I want to get down to, or the width. So I'm going to take it thinner and narrower. That's sort of getting there. That's the idea. So now I need to change the tools in the guillotine tool. I want some flat ones. It's these ones here. I can get them in. There we go. Oh, bugger. That's what happens when you take your eye off the pencil. I've just completely burnt the end off of that. Absolutely nothing left. Look at it, just a stump. Hey ho, we'll start again. At least we hadn't got too far, so it's not going to be too much of an issue. That's why you really got to pay attention to what you're doing, because I've done it. I've made something, got it almost finished, burnt the bloody thing to pieces. So you do have to keep your eye on the pencil a bit. So start again. I suppose I could have cut this bit out of the video, but I just, you know, it's the way it went. It's the way it goes sometimes, you know. We all have off moments. So I thought I'd leave it in just to show you all I am fallible. Right, 3/4 of an inch. Flatten it down. Squeeze it out a bit either side. Very end of it in the guillotine tool, rounded dies. Flatten it out and then just define it a little bit more so you get the actual point. I think this one's come up a little bit pointier than the first one. Alright, so I'll keep my eye on it this time. Turn the fire down a bit because it actually is going a bit heavy. Alright, flatten it down, and say not quite to the thickness of the end piece, but nearly. Neck it in, and that's the width that we want. and then thin it down again. I want to have it gradually, I'm aiming for it to gradually taper from the neck, where I'll just cut in back up to where I'm going to have the, hopefully, the sort of shoulders. Change the dies again. This time I'll keep the tool piece of steel out the fire. So I need to, as I say, neck it in, but I want to leave sort of a bit of a bulge. You'll see what I mean in a minute. It will become self-explanatory, I hope. Just bringing it down a bit thinner again. Now I've got a mark on the anvil here, I don't know if you can see it, and that second mark nearest me is where I want to go from the square to back to round, and that's where I need it to swell. So we need the guillotine tool again, this time with the square dies in, so I can get a neck and leave the bulge. It's difficult to describe, but I'm sure it will become apparent. So I'm going to flatten the steel out, but not thin it down again, so it will spread widthwise, hopefully. But at the end, that's it. See there, I'm going to now neck it in with the square dies. And that's where the pin will slide over and come down to that shoulder. At least that's the theory. I think you can probably just about see what I'm up to. I will try and do this a bit closer, give you some close-ups. I just thought I'd do one from a fixed point and then show you it again in a few close-ups. I'm just checking the length again to make sure I've got my neck in the right place and where it's got to be cut off. So that's the next job. Now I'm just with the rounded end of the hammer and over the beak, I'm just thinning that back down away, just behind the swelling that I've created. Just level it out a bit there. It's difficult when you've got a bulge on both ends to find a flat piece of anvil to work on. So the hardy hole works quite well sometimes. You see that's a bit offset, so I'm just trying to get it straightened up again. So I'm just going to whip it off about there. I'm just checking on my measurements to make sure I've got enough heat left in there that that'll cut quite easily. Right, so now we've got to round that end off. That's going to be the pin. I did try making one of these before this one out of some round, and I just didn't have enough meat in it. It was still 8mm, but 8mm round. There was just not enough meat in it when I flattened it to get the shoulder. So that's why I thought I'd have to try it with the square, and it actually seems to be working quite well. I'm just going to draw this out from square down into round. Tongs aren't holding it very well. Try not to damage the shoulder I created. You could do this again with the guillotine tool if you'd got the right size half round dies to round that up. I'm just going to try a pin in it or on it, and that's still a bit tight, so I'm just going to round it down a little bit more, because the pins on this one has got to move freely. These bits aren't fixed. I presume they put one hinge fixed, one in, slot the window on, and then slide the next pin down over it, I'm guessing, and then screw it into the wall with the eye so it can't come out. So another try. That's better. See, that is just tight enough, but it's free. So we'll leave it at that. I'm just going to straighten it up and clean it up a bit, or tidy it up, not clean it up. I'll do that later. I just want to make sure everything's in line. Define the round end a bit. Again with the rounded end of my hammer. It's really difficult to figure out which bit to hold and where to hit it, because there's sort of lumps and bumps. You've got to be careful you don't damage one bit when you hit another bit. Let's get in there. I'm just going to tidy that brown bit up because it's a little bit messy, considering I haven't touched it since I made it. You don't want to start messing about with it when you first do it, because like you saw earlier, you might burn it and the end drop off. So you don't want to do any titivating until right at the end, when there's less chance of you wasting your time, basically. Right, I think we're just about there. The next job, I've just got to set an angle for that to go in there. So I'm just going to put it over the edge of the anvil and give it a bosh. If you can see that. And that will fit, hopefully, nicely in there. So I can clamp it and then pull the other bit round. So it all meets up nicely. At least that's the theory. Pair of grips to hold it, left tool just to pull it round. Doesn't need to be very hot because it's quite thin, and it will pull round fairly easily. That last little bit's a bit tricky, getting it into the recess. There you go. That's near enough. Now I can just fiddle about with it, because this bar wants to be about ½ inch off the anvil, but it wants to be parallel obviously to the anvil, so I'm just fiddling with it just to get it about right. That's not enough, so do a little bit more. That looks about right to me. I think that'll do it. That is almost the finished article. Right, I've just given it a quick clean up with a wire brush and drilled the hole in it, obviously. I think it goes that way up. That, you can see swivels freely. And that's how it goes. Or other way up, as I say. So let's do one now with a few more different angles. Very end in there, just nip it in. Doesn't need a lot. And just define that point because it's sort of left a bit of a rounded bit to it rather than a pointy bit. So the end of the cross pane is ideal just to, there you go, you can see that, make that a bit pointier. And that's about it really. And we've got to flatten the rest of it out. Again, neck it in. Be careful you don't go too far because you can see that's just about right, but you could quite easily go a little bit mad and cut your end off if you're not careful. So you can see that's thinning it down both ways. Really doesn't take long to heat up, so you really got to keep your eye on the ball. Ordinarily, a lot of the times we'll try and have more than one piece in the fire at a time, but not with this. It's too delicate because so you've just got to take your eye off it for a second and you've lost it. Right, that line I just marked off is where I want to thicken it up so I get a bit of a shoulder on it. I've already explained all this once, haven't I? I'll shut up and let you enjoy it. That's where I want to put the neck in. So I'll change my dies. Now, I don't know if any of you saw the video where I actually hard faced the tops of my dies, and works a treat, absolute treat. The only downside, it started damaging my hammers. That's why I'm using the copper mallet, because I was hammering away with my cross pane, and suddenly it felt like someone had shot me in the stomach, and a great big lump of, there you go, you can see the neck down there, that's quite a nice, if it'll focus. It's still not going to focus, but you can get the idea. Anyway, yeah, a great big lump had flown off my cross pane and got me in the stomach. So I had to reface a couple of hammers, just ground them flat again, and I'm now using the copper mallet. Right, now we've got to round that off, same as the other one. Yeah, so me hard facing the tools to save them burring over has actually sort of, in a way, backfired. And it wasn't a particularly hard rod that I used. I can't remember what Rockwell it was, but they weren't particularly hard. They're ones I use on the horseshoes, so they can't be too hard. Otherwise the horses slip if the hard facing is too hard. Never mind, we live and learn. I'll just have to use the copper mallet, which works perfectly alright. At least the dies won't wear out very quickly. Hard facing and the copper mallet. You can see I'm doing this in real time and it takes no time at all to heat up. Tongs don't grip it particularly well, I think because it's tapered, but they're not bad. I don't know quite where else you'd get these hinge pins. I've never seen any like it before. It's a little bit tight still, so I'm just going to whip a little bit more off of that. Thin it down a bit more. Yeah, they're a very unusual looking pin, and as I showed you the type of window that they're for, I don't know if they're actually going with these windows that I've got in here, the white ones, which I showed you on the previous video, but that's exactly how the type of window they would go on. And if people like me didn't make them, I don't know where you'd get them. There you go. Lovely fit. Just enough. So, just going to do the same as I did before. Just basically straighten everything, tidy everything slightly before we go on and bend it. I'm obviously happy with that one because I'm going to bend it. I'm just trying to see if you can see what I'm doing, which you can just. That's all it needs. That'll go in there and we'll pull it round. I am going to do yet another angle for you to look at, so don't worry if you can't see 100% what's going on. You might see better on the next angle when I do the next one. So this doesn't need to be horrendously hot. Pulls around quite nicely with that F tool. And pushes nicely into the corner. Again, that's basically it. Just a little bit of titivating. Again, see, that's miles too high, but I'm just going to drop it down a little bit. You can't see, hang on, let's get that out of the way, you might be able to see now. Up this end. That's a bit better, but now the pin's sort of pointing downwards a little bit, but oh no, that's pretty good. I don't know if you can see the top's offset a little bit, so I'm just going to straighten that up. It's all those sort of things you can do afterwards. Obviously you want to keep most of it in line as much as you can whilst you're making it. You don't want things to go completely, you know, boss-eyed. Otherwise it just makes life difficult when you're actually making it. If you can keep things fairly well somewhere near, and all you need is like this, a little bit of tickling around at the end to get everything right. That doesn't look bad. Looks about right. There we go. Pin fits. Right, here we go. Let's get a bit closer. Now this one took me ages to make, this final one, because I kept stopping to change shots. But I think you can actually see much better exactly what's going on. That's flattened it out and really widened it. A little bit more, let's make sure. You can really see how much metal moves with each blow from that angle. I'm trying to work, or bear in mind while I'm working, that I can't go too far back because I need to swell that little shoulder. So you've always got to bear that in mind as well, what the next process is. Don't go wild and start hammering it too madly. That's where I've got to widen the shoulder. So it's thinned it out quite a lot to get the width, but then the rest of it's going to come down a bit more anyway. And with the square dies, now that gives you a good idea how useful this little tool is. There you go. Nice little shoulder on it. I'm going to round it up after we've cut it off. Just marking visually where it needs to come off. That's it. Just straighten it out a bit and we'll get it warm. Start rounding it off. I will have to admit, this particular one I made here turned out to be too long. I don't know where I messed up, but somewhere I messed up. And although I made it and turned it and got it all finished, I actually binned it and made another one because it was just about ½ inch too long. As I say, I just don't know where I made the cock up, but at least you get to see the process. Still a bit tight. I don't think it matters if they're a little bit on the loose side, but I don't want them to be too loose. So I want to try and get them to fit fairly well. I'm going to tell the people that they really ought to keep them in pairs because they're all slightly different. So I've actually made each piece to fit with the other piece. They're not universal. Not that that will make a difference, I don't think, providing the people keep them as a, there we go, that's better. Keep them as a pair. Goes down to, I guess, just over 45. And that should, there's a bit of a better view, hopefully. See, that fits in that corner quite nicely. And then we just tweak it round. You can see there that it's long, because that there where I'm pushing in, I'm going to do it again, that's basically where the shoulder should have been. So it's about ½ inch too long. But never mind. Some blacksmiths' floors are littered with failures. Luckily I don't have too many. So it took me 5 hours to do the first lot. This lot's taken me about 4 hours to do this lot. But there you go. They look quite nice now. They're all wire brushed up. Hopefully the client will be very happy with them. And hopefully he'll send me some photos of them all installed. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.